You can email the program if you like, jcs at 979espnradio.com. And as always, all guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. Our thanks to our friends at Phone Hero jumping on board the Jeff Cameron Show, sponsoring the hotline for us. And it's nice to be reached out to and to contact people who'd like to do business. We do business with those who do business with us, and it's great to have a new member on board. So appreciate you, Phone Hero. Good job.
Yeah, I'll be doing work with them because I made a boo-boo this weekend. I pinched the screen on our laptop, on our Mac.
Why did you do that?
I picked up the laptop to move it, and I just didn't pick it up from underneath at the keyboard level, and it now needs repair. And
so it cracked it?
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Yep.
Fiance happy about that?
Nope.
Yeah,
and they're giving me a good rate, but it ain't cheap.
No,
it's an expensive screen.
Don't break it.
Yep, that's correct.
I have my Mac right here, buddy.
Yep.
Don't be touching mine.
You picked it up the right way.
Yeah, you got to pick
grabbed
it up
it under the keyboard.
That's what you do right there.
That's what I get for cutting a corner.
Mm-hmm. Lazy. Paid a dear price.
Oh, dear price indeed.
Thanks, Phone Hero. I know you'll help my boy out and anybody else out there who needs it. So in the world of sports, as we continue to monitor.
That's correct.
Yeah. As we continue to do that, I don't know where your head's at. I don't know where your heart's at. I don't know where your mind's at, what you're thinking. Probably not good, right? Probably not in a good headspace right now. As to sports and their return, is it going to happen? Well, when the weekend features a spike in many states, including this one, it concerns you. When you read articles like the one out of Clemson, South Carolina, that said 14 more football players tested positive for coronavirus this past week, that brought the total up to 37. Now, as of Friday, I think it was, they had conducted 430 tests of its personnel, with 47 of those coming up with COVID-19. It said that 28 players have completed a 10-day isolation period. Nobody has been hospitalized for the virus. That, according to Jeff Callan, a spokesman for Clemson. They're isolating the players who tested positive. And anybody that had close contact with these players that have tested positive, or the 43 athletes and or staff members that have tested positive, they've been advised to self-quarantine, of course. So, this is part of the larger discussion, and we wondered how we were going to be able to stomach the positive cases, right? When it's one thing to, in theory, suggest you understand that there's going to be a large spike in the number of positive tests and COVID-19 cases as student athletes come back to campuses and begin to work out voluntarily and to condition and be around one another. Now, they're doing their best, everybody is, I'm sure, to keep players at a social distance necessary to remain safe and all of that with these different workouts. But we just knew that as more and more athletes got together and arrived on campus, you'd read about these positive tests. And the key was always going to be, as it is pretty much throughout America, do we see an overwhelming number of cases that lead to then hospitalizations? That is to say, are hospitals overwhelmed? It's what we did. It's what we efforted to do in flattening the curve, right? It wasn't so much about eradicating anything. You weren't going to be able to do that. It was more about, can you keep them from being overwhelmed so that those who do get sick and are in the realm of the endangered, if you will, meaning underlying health conditions, age, obesity, whatever it might be.
Separate conditions or accidents.
That's correct. Yes. Could they gain access to the healthcare needs that they have, that they present, by getting into an ICU or a hospital bed and having access to life-saving care? That's what you had to be sure you were allowing for, and so it wasn't the spike in cases, although that can not certainly be a good thing. It's the hospitalizations that we're closely monitoring and or the deaths that we're closely monitoring, because if that surges, then football and every other sport for that matter in the fall is really in real danger of not being played.
I can tell you that one piece of groundwork that happened today, the university had integration of staff phases that they were going through leading up to fall campus being open and all that kind of stuff. July 7th was supposed to be their own internal phase 2 of allowing people back to work at the different offices on the campus. It's been pushed back. That was an announcement earlier today. So the university at least has taken a step back and said, well, okay, Leon County, different parts of our state, the Southeast in general, if you're coming back to work and you want to physically be here, now's not the time. So we'll let you know. We'll let you know when phase 2 can start again. That is just for the faculty and staff. That has nothing to do with enrollment. But it's not a good domino to fall, that's for sure.
No, you do. You get real concerned at the same time. If you want to be buoyed and feel better about the chances, you look at Bundesliga, you look at different organizations that have re-engaged and continued their season and or started their season, and some have done so successfully. Now, I understand golf, for example, if we were to use the PGA Tour, Dustin Johnson winning over the weekend, and he adds to his tally, a tally he adds to annually, I might add. He's won every year he's been on the tour, so 13 straight years now he's won on tour. That's an aside. They have obviously successfully done this. They've had some positive cases, but it looks like their protocol, their plan seems to be adjusted accordingly, and they're figuring out any holes in that plan, and they're moving forward. Golf's an individual game, spread out, outdoors, all that stuff seems a little bit easier to do, but other sports are doing it successfully as well. Today we learned tennis wants to come back in August. That's going to be kind of hit or miss. How many people are flying to New York City and going to be basically in a bubble of a hotel to play the U.S. Open? That's what the U.S. Tennis Association is saying that they want to do.
Hell of a lot safer to fly to New York now than it was 2 months ago.
Yes, it'd be safer to fly there than here right now currently. So, yes, that would be true. So you're seeing different plans laid out. Some, we haven't really been tested yet. We're learning again. Finally, the NHL is re-engaging in that second part of phase 2, if you will, of their return to action.
They may push back their phase 3 by a few days into the middle of July, but it's not supposed to delay the start of their season. They're still determining, I don't know if they announced it today or not, their hub cities, but it looks like one is going to be Vegas, probably, and then the other ones, they're considering a ton of Canadian cities. Yeah. Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, all those places are still up for grabs, but it looks like it's going to be Western Coast trending cities for the NHL.
As far as you and I are concerned, nobody really cares where they are so long as they play.
If Europe would have us
let's go.
Send the NBA over there, the way their caseload is.
Yeah, so we're in a place now where we're all closely monitoring these things to see whether or not sports will be played in the fall. And again, there are more important things. We get that. I throw that out there, the obligatory. I understand there are more important things in the world than sports. Point is, you're listening to a sports talk show, and we all have a great passion for athletics and sports leagues, and we'd like to see something of a normal routine re-engaged at some point. So, you just kind of watch carefully. There is the economic reality, too, of how important college football is to universities all across the country, and the cataclysmic effect on not having a season within the athletic departments and really the university system as is you can't really overstate the importance of this. And so we know that they're fighting every step of the way to figure out the best way to do this. And I don't know that they know that yet, but we are running out of time. And so you begin to have a season in the fall. So you begin to talk about the middle of July needing to have some recognizable, well thought out, structured plan that universities and programs are going to follow throughout the country to be able to play football games in September. So I'll be curious. Florida State's not announcing their numbers. That's fine. Some places are keeping that under wraps. Others are just open with the information. Obviously, Clemson is one of them, telling the free world, 43 cases. Moving on. Nobody's been hospitalized. Obviously, we saw a week or so ago LSU's situation, Texas's situation, and others. It'll be curious just to monitor those cases carefully, because it was something that they were always going to have to be able to stomach. Now, here's the deal. Let's just say they can, and there aren't hospitalizations, and that these things follow the percentages, and that means that 99.5 or 6% of the kids that get it in their early 20s are going to be fine, just fine, especially really healthy kids like these that play college football. But you don't know, so we're we're monitoring that very, very carefully. But if it plays out that way, I would imagine that they will proceed, Tom. And then it's a matter of how do you conduct the season in the era of COVID? That is to say, if on Thursday you're right before you play Clemson, 18 of your players test positive, do we play Clemson? Do we go on with the game?
Frankly, I think that the players would have to submit to living in a bubble within the campus structure because it's not operating football in the time of COVID. It's operating football in the time of COVID with people on campus, kids on campus.
Yeah.
You think 43 is a lot? At first blush, it sure is. But take that number and apply it to the enrollment that's going to be on campus in the fall. If that, in fact, is the direction that the universities go, 43 is nothing. 43 is what they'll do in half a day when this thing first surges. Because kids are coming from all different parts of the country, intermingling. They're going to go places. They're going to be together in close quarters. That's just the nature of being in college. So if you think 43 is a lot, I know it's pertaining to the football program, but wait till you see the numbers on college campuses throughout the Southeast if they start this thing on time. And I'm talking the fall semester, not football season.
Yeah, as we're watching not only the progress as student athletes come back to campus, but also the leagues. It should be noted we didn't touch on this at the end of last week, but NBA players were tested for coronavirus as they're attempting to restart their season, obviously, in July here in Florida. And what they found was 5% of their players tested positive. So now you say, what does that equate to? Well, there were 302 players tested, 16 tested positive. Now, that is a higher rate of infection than the English and German soccer leagues uncovered in their first rounds of testing in countries that were more successful in containing the epidemic. And it brings the number of NBA players known to have been infected to at least 26 in total now. So watch the NBA because they're supposed to be coming back, and they're attempting to do it in Florida, and we'll see. It's going to be very curious.
Even still, does it surprise you that they haven't at least leaked information that they're considering different areas at this point? Because, the fact that they're saying, Disney's where we're going, even still?
Yeah, but it's a perfect setup for them. If you can get the players there not infected as they arrive, take whatever precautions necessary to get them there on site.
All employees, every single one of them, from the cleaning crew all the way up to the head trainer, they all need to be in the bubble. Like the people who live in the surrounding area of Orlando.
It's almost impossible to figure out. How are you going to do that? You can't tell, a sanitation crew member who wants to go home and see his family at the end of each day that they can't go see their kids.
I think they can.
Well,
I think they'll have to.
Yeah, because
what if that dude or lady picks up food on the way home, and they
I get it.
Because you have to. That's all it takes. That to blow up a whole sport. That's all it takes.
It's gonna be a tough call, man. You're gonna tell a dad can't go home and see his wife and kids at the end of a day at work or a week at work or whatever it might be.
They're telling the NBA players.
They are, but the NBA players are making $20 million in some cases. That guy's making minimum wage. I don't know, man. That's a toughie. You have to incentivize that maybe a little bit more, it would seem to me.
Yeah, maybe you could. The NBA could incentivize it a little bit. But, I think Disney would be well within its rights to say, take it or leave it. Because if you can't, somebody else is going to.
I don't know, man.
These players wouldn't be here without these special circumstances.
No, but I'm saying those players were given the choice to opt out under no punishment. I think that there would be a way in which somebody would still keep their job, but if they didn't want to do this.
Well, but the problem is, Disney pushed back its opening date, right? I don't think it was just in Cali. I think it was here because of all the cases that are happening in Florida. So it's like, do you want a hotel property that, we need workers for or not?
They're in dreamland thinking about opening up anytime soon in Florida. That's insane. Who's racing to Disney World?
So the argument for the employer would be, listen, the Swan and the Dolphin are going to have soccer players because I think that's where the MLS is. Mm-hmm. And then all these other, resorts are going to have basketball players. And nobody would be here. So you want the check or not? Because we're going to need you to stay at the Hollywood Studios or the Disney All-Star Resort, the motel one.
Yeah, could you let entire families opt in? Could you say, only if my wife and kids are with me?
I think that's the smart thing for the leagues to do if the leagues are small enough anyway. Like the NBA probably is in a much better position considering the rosters are so much smaller.
Yeah, you can do it with football, yeah. It'll be interesting. Speaking of football, we do have to get there. There is news. Cam Newton has finally found a home. It's in New England. Interesting mix there to find out that he signs. That does make sense. We kind of, speculated on that some time ago that beats the hell out of going into a season with Jarrett Stidham, one would think, especially if Cam's healthy. So we'll touch on that. Plus the league fined New England. There are some football and basketball and baseball-related notes on the day. We'll get there. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. or today. Like, just update that every day. What did Jeff watch on his new spectacular 82-inch television last night?
So here's a question from the home and lifestyle channels. Which ones do you watch the most? Like HGTV, Food Network?
Well, is HGTV the one where you see people buying and selling homes?
Yeah.
I'll watch that occasionally. I can find interest if they're buying and selling homes in a city that I find inviting. If you're buying it, if I'm flipping around and all of a sudden somebody's trying to buy a home in the Caribbean, I'll go, wonder what you can get in the Caribbean for $400K. Let's see what we got. Let's find out what we got. And so I'll watch that. I don't. Let's see. Is A&E considered? What is that? I watch the hell out of that because of all the crime stuff.
Yeah. I would classify it in the same category of channels. Like
I would too.
They're usually sandwiched between channel 40 and 60, right? And, well, if you don't have the HD, of course.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yes.
I don't even know what that means, 40 and 60.
Well, those are the old cable.
440 and 460?
Probably, sure. Let's go with that instead.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
Yeah.
And, they're all kind of on the same wavelength. It's like, there's some programs that are pretty good, but it's mostly something you watch to pass the time.
Like Pickers?
Things that would be on in a waiting room at a doctor's office.
Yeah, those two dudes going across the country foraging through people's junk.
Yeah. Like Weather Channel has kind of turned into that during the day as well.
I can watch a little Weather Channel. I mean, maybe I'm getting old. My wife loves the Weather Channel. Not to see what the weather's going to be like here. We know what it's going to be like here in June and July. Hot as Hades. Enough to make you want to punch your own testicles if you're sitting at a stoplight. It's ridiculous. That said, I am interested when they have weather-type shows.
Is it like the UFC punch? Like you do the hammer punch, or do you turn the...
The other day, you live here. It was 106 degrees.
I played golf from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Saturday.
No.
The raw temperature got up to 96, so who knows what the hell the heat index was.
Anybody come close to perishing? I mean, that is...
There was a log jam on 16T, and I thought maybe it was because somebody passed out in the fairway. It got to be 3 groups waiting on that tee. Everything else was flowing pretty nicely. I thought, somebody pass out? Did we have an issue?
It's hot. It's likely to happen. I'm telling you, it's disconcerting. I'll watch some of those shows. Like I told you, I watch the A&E because it's like another 48 hours or whatever, the first 48, whatever it's called. I watch that. I'm always interested in those kinds of investigations, catching people.
I feel like the Food Network would be really good for your television.
Everything is good for my television, Tom. It's incredible what it does. My wife caught me looking at the television lustily. She thought that I was ridiculous because I had the golf on. And I'm watching the golf, and as you well know, first of all, it's not like golf courses are ugly. I mean, they're often very scenic. But on 82 inches of pure magic, they are absolutely awe-inspiring. And so I just sat there, mouth agape at what I was seeing as they were shooting from the green back, and you could see the fairway and the houses that were on the course, and unreal. We watched, I think I told you to see Knives Out. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Really good movie.
Daniel Craig.
He kills it. He's incredible in this movie. You'll love the movie. It's smart, and it's funny. But anyhow, we watched that with the kids on this. That was the first movie we watched on the 82-incher. Now, there are other movies, like 1917 on there is going to be insane. And I'm looking forward to it. But just thought you should know. Jeff's big-ass television.
So you haven't seen 1917 yet?
No.
Oh.
Heard it's good.
Okay.
I have every reason to believe. I may watch that tonight, Tom.
Given that they're doing the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit this week, with the field that is, about akin to what you think the Rocket Mortgage Open would be.
Yeah.
I was hoping to see that the European Tour would be firing up soon because the continent is doing quite well. I think that the European Tour's golf feed would be even more spectacular for your TV because you have all the range of colors.
Yeah, you're in
It's not
Spain,
just like one, bluish green color, or depending upon what course you're on. Yeah, you think about the rolling hills, the browns, the greens, the blues.
Well, I don't disagree.
Oh, buddy.
Your field for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, and I'll get to the Patriots story and Cam Newton in a moment. But this is what you're looking at. You're looking at Bryson DeChambeau, Webb Simpson, Patrick Reed, Hideki Matsuyama, Sung J M, Ricky Fowler, Tony Finau. Not a bad field. I mean, it's Bubba Watson for whatever.
But by the post-COVID standards, this is most certainly a step down.
It is the first time that a few guys have decided to take a couple days and not play. Because Rory's played everything. Obviously, apparently Bryson DeChambeau is going to occupy our television at all times these days. He's playing every single event. And, unfortunately, he's playing well.
Let me guess. He'll be on PGA Tour Live.
For sure. He's 7-1. Patrick Reed, 16-1. Tyrrell Hatton, 16-1. Hideki Matsuyama, 18-1. Yeah. If you want good odds, if you want to take a flyer on somebody to win this thing with the odds early in the week, if you're asking me, I got to study this a little bit more. I'm going to go with Ricky Fowler at 30-1 is not bad, but Victor Hovland at 20-1 is pretty good.
He had a decent week again.
Yeah,
he hit some amazing shots. He's got those kinds of shots in the bag. Jay Monahan should be fired though, the commissioner of the PGA. He should be fired.
Why?
They had early tee times on Saturday morning.
I saw that because of the rain.
Yeah, well, nobody did live. They didn't cut to it on Golf Channel. PGA Tour Live had featured holes only.
Yeah.
It was a complete farce.
It was stupid because when I tuned in on Saturday later on, it said live, and then I went, this can't be live because on my app for the PGA Tour, I had already seen Dustin Johnson go nuts and was in the house. But I'm watching him on hole number 3.
This after weeks of them not joining the coverage, the full coverage till 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday and Friday. You've got the only sport in America that people can watch people outdoors and playing. And you're only going to jump to coverage at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Not what you do.
That sucks. That's ridiculous. You should be celebrating the game, rewriting all the contracts that you're doing on the fly. It's COVID time.
It angers me.
You're not advancing your game.
My man Mike Martin Jr., who we had on the show, was it last week, texted me that he was tuned into the golf, and he goes, well, good Lord, I guess they're doing well because every 2 seconds they're cutting a commercial. And it is that live commercial thing at all times.
The playing through. All because they want their $70 for the PGA Tour Live. I mean, you could do so much more with it. Yeah, you could even – there's a sport that lends itself to a panel like what ESPN's doing with KBO.
Yeah.
You could have people talking on the desk and watching the golf.
I just want to watch the damn golf, though. Come on, can we just watch the golf? Let's watch the golf.
So on Saturday, they had live pregame coverage. They held to that. They didn't cut to the course at all. It's 12-1. And then at 1 o'clock, they got a documentary about a dead golfer before the coverage starts at 2. And the guys were already on 15 and 16.
Cam Newton's 1-year incentive-laden contract with the New England Patriots, pretty much a no-lose situation if you're the Patriots, right? I mean, you didn't really want to roll in with Jarrett Stidham. Maybe you did, I don't know. But you get a guy to come in here and fight with Stidham and Brian Hoyer to fight for the starting job, vacated, as we all know, by Tom Brady, who really does not have time for your COVID. He's going to work out with the players in the box no matter what. Doesn't really matter. He's going to just do what he does. I didn't ask you about this, and I got to be careful, but the blatant disregard for the rules, as evidenced through the years by the New England Patriots and anybody who worked for them, on display here with Tom Brady as he comes to Tampa. And if you're trying to win a Super Bowl in a short period of time, I don't mind it.
Well, here's the first thing I'd say. The first thing I'd say is if Jameis Winston was leading these workouts, it would be the first story on SportsCenter.
It would be the first story on SportsCenter. That is right. That is correct.
Secondly, my guess is Tom Brady is snake oil slinging his immunity water on all these players he's working with, saying, guys, we're fine. Don't worry about it. And he stares off into the distance saying, we're going to be fine, like the Scientologists across the bay.
Yeah, the Clearwater people, yeah. I don't think he's doing that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's suggested they drink their magic water. But I would tell you that I think he just wants to get the timing down in that short passing game. And it is necessary, Tom. I mean, we don't have a lot of time to work.
Well, there was one flaw in the team that Corey and I drafted on War Chant. Nobody really took us up on it. I was glad because as Jameis has worked on Cam Akers, that's really cool of those guys in the backfield
pretty
together.
Pretty loaded team.
That's unbelievable. But the thing was, you could have said, well, he's never going to throw the swing pass to Work done. So you've taken one element of Work's game completely out of the equation.
Yeah.
And the drone shots or whatever shots they had of Brady from on high of the Berkeley prep
that's
workout.
all he's throwing.
That's all he's throwing.
But they're
His
right on
swing
target.
routes.
They're right on target, Tom.
And I have to say, I was pleased to see the swing route is back because if Evans and Godwin and Gronk are going to clear it down the field for you,
swing it up.
It's 6 yards of play every play.
I have to admit, timing looked good. I watched with great interest. I was like, look at that, in stride. I'll take that check down. 2nd and 4. Let's go. That's a one-year deal for Cam Newton, and it's a smart deal. We'll see. I don't know that he's ever going to be the guy that was the NFL MVP en route to taking Carolina to the Super Bowl 50 it was. Of course, would have been nice if he'd bothered to attempt to fall on that fumble. But anyhow, that said, it was a magical season, even if he acted like a bitch afterwards and didn't want to answer questions about his lack of effort to fall on that football. He certainly had displayed an amazing acumen for the position that season and all that it entailed. If they get that guy who's many years removed or feels like many years removed from playing at that level, then all of a sudden the long national nightmare that is the New England Patriots continues. If he's anywhere close to that, you then have to reckon with what is a good defense and maybe a average offense, which means they win the division again.
Here's what I want to know about the Patriot way. Does it extend to your fashion? Or will Cam Newton be allowed to steal headlines, twice a month with whatever choices he makes for his postgame press
When he goes
conferences?
Thelma and Louise and where's
Exactly. When he goes Susan Sarandon. Yeah.
I want to picture Bill Belichick looking at Cam Newton coming in as Susan Sarandon. That'll be fun.
I think that's a great cartoon to draw, though. It's like Cam dressed like that, and then Bill has the cut-off sleeves, and they're both looking at each other like, you weirdo.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
And they're both right.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Apparently, Cam's motivated and a little pissed off. Well, he better be because, again, it is, without question, an incentive-laden deal. Now, look. If I'm New England, I do that for competition's sake alone, and it's $1.8 million. I mean, listen, they get no money wrapped up in this. If it fails, who cares? It's a one-year deal, $1.8 million against the cap. Whatever. You move on from there if it doesn't work out. But I would also call plays, if I were Josh McDaniels, ruthlessly. That is to say, Cam, you're running the ball 15 times a game. 15 times a game, I'm putting your big ass out there.
3rd and 6, the first one of the year. Let's see if he's got it.
Yeah, roll him out.
We can still punt. Let's just see if he's got it. 3rd and 6.
Go. Quarterback draw.
You get this one, we give you another drive.
Yeah. No, I would do it. I mean, he's massive. And that was that certainly was the frustrating aspect of facing Carolina when he was healthy. Anything 3rd and short, forget about it. He's got it. So
yeah, it was a race to 8 yards. That's what we would say when we were talking about those games, and the few times that they were actually big games when the Bucs played in them was it's 8 yards to a first down with that freaking guy. It's 8 yards.
Really, really, really annoying. By the way, lost in all this, I had forgotten. I was going back through the free agent ticker today because I was seeing who remains unsigned after all this time, and we certainly saw what happened to Jameis taking that deal in New Orleans. We've seen now what happened to Cam Newton taking this deal in New England. But along the way, I don't know how I missed it, but just as an aside, I saw where Ronald Darby is signed with Washington. Did you know that?
I had no idea. I didn't know his contract was up.
Yeah, he signed a one-year deal worth $4 million.
That's it, huh?
Well, listen, it's not like he's played at a high level lately.
No.
I'd take my $4 million. It's probably the last deal he's ever going to get.
That is by far, I think, the segment group that you circle when you say, what the hell happened to us? And I don't mean like moving forward 5 years later. I mean that 2014 specific, that secondary, had so much damn talent.
Yeah, well, they didn't care
so
to be
much
there.
damn
Everybody
talent.
was selfish at that point, and we were warned about it. Jalen Ramsey told everybody that everybody was out for their own, and it was pretty clear they were ready to get paid. That is the most impressive part of what Clemson's been able to do and what Alabama's been able to do, and Ohio State to some extent. I mean, when you have elite players who climb atop the mountain, they reach the pinnacle of the sport, they win a national championship, and they're going into a money year the following year. It's just human nature. You're going to protect yourself. You've got millions of dollars. You've played this game for so long. A lot of kids play this game, maybe never dreaming of going to the NFL, maybe dreaming of going to the NFL, but then now it's upon you. It's at your doorstep. It's a reality. You're about to walk into life-changing money, generationally changing types of money. How do you get that guy to play hard and sacrifice? Because we couldn't in 2014. Jimbo couldn't. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Good Monday, everybody. You know, I'm looking at this. That's right. Yeah. So another story about what bands are going to do if we play football. And they're looking into a study of spit, Tom. A study of spit.
There's a lot of that in the band.
Well, there is a lot of that in the band. There's also a lot of that in football. There's a lot of that in baseball. There's a lot of that in sport. Yeah, I get more depressed the more I read those things. So I saw that headline. I know that they're trying to figure out what to do with collegiate bands if there is football, and really, for that matter, just moving forward, how are they going to handle all of this? It just doesn't read well. It reads like that would be a virtual impossibility.
Well, yes. Say goodbye to the halftime show for starters. Think about all the spacing. They're violating the spacing code. Or you're going to test them like you test football players? I don't know. You put them on a plane to travel? No.
I just don't see it. Do you?
You might have an alternate performance that you could stream. I don't know. It's really tough. I just feel so bad for seniors across the board, whether it was a senior or an eighth grader in high school, college, that were supposed to graduate and have the full ceremony not too long ago. Mm-hmm. People going into their senior years. I mean, if you're a freshman or let's say an incoming sophomore, by the time you graduate, things probably will be relatively normal. We'll see about the economy, but you could gather in crowds like we used to. But if you were supposed to walk this spring or you're supposed to this winter or the next spring, I don't know, man. You're just going to have a completely different world that you're entering. Talking to somebody this weekend who's supposed to graduate at the end of this summer at Florida State. So they don't know what to do, given the way the economy is. Do they need to go back to school for more? That's what people did when I graduated college.
They just went back to school.
They just went back, got a grad degree because, we were
going
in the tank.
Going to the marketplace was not a good idea, yeah.
I got lucky. I had a minimum wage job at a radio station around town.
Amazing. The people were so kind.
They bought me tall boys. They may have given me $2 or $3 to spend at Poor Paul's over the weekend, and that gets you a long way.
Here you go, buddy. Couple bucks. We had a football game canceled. This between Southeast Missouri and Dayton due to COVID. Also, something I wanted to mention was the fact that I mentioned it for the break. I teased it, but didn't talk about what it was. The NFL has punished the New England Patriots for the video crew that captured the Cleveland-Cincinnati game. And, of course, Belichick said he never watched any of that footage, but they were docked a draft pick, a third-round draft pick, and fined over $1 million for that, that's a weighty fine. Anybody could have filmed that pregame stretch and workout that they filmed.
I feel like $1 million is a drop in the bucket for that league. Like if it was hockey, that'd be $1 million. But for football, I mean, that's like one play of one game for the amount of TV revenue you get.
Well, I don't know. Yes, this year we're going to watch carefully because we're talking about college football, but pro football has been the one thing of all the sports leagues. They've just been unwavering. They're like, nope, right on time, everything we want to do as planned. We'll see, man. It's almost July. This is the week. Hey, folks, you know this. This is list week. I mean, the next 2 weeks are list weeks. There's just nothing in ordinarily. You're walking into All-Star week. You got Wimbledon. That depressed me this morning that I wasn't able to watch Wimbledon. But you would have that, and then you would have the All-Star game, and stupid-ass Chris Berman going back 4,000 times on a home run derby.
Well, remember, they kicked him out.
Well,
it was
God.
Ravage.
I know, but
yeah.
It's still the damage that's been done to the collective baseball watching psyche over the years by Berman at a home run derby going back after every home run. Yo, Jesus, Chris. Guess what, buddy? There's going to be another one here in a few seconds.
I'm ready.
I guess so. That was always how did they not have production meetings? Chris, now listen, it's not like a regular game where maybe you get 2 home runs in a game and then it comes out of nowhere. You're not expecting it. One happens in the second inning, one happens in the 7th or something like that. I get your enthusiasm. This is, Chris, a home run derby. Every guy that comes up presumably is going to hit several home runs.
See, but here's the second layer to that makes this all an impossible fantasy in your mind. he is a perfectionist. He fancies himself to be, judging by the rants that he went on that were captured on film, rolled tape when he's mad on the set of Monday Night Football or wherever else he gets pissed off. You think in a production meeting he doesn't have a lot to say about the art of what's to come? That's what would drive you crazy, I'd bet, more than anything else, is that he would be indignant about his approach because it's an artist at work here, sir.
Back is not an art form. Stop it. It's a home run call that was made famous by you when you were an anchor at SportsCenter doing at the desk calls of the highlights. This is a home run derby, my man. There's going to be literally hundreds of home runs hit tonight. We can't all have them accompanied by back.
I guarantee he would get red in the face and yell about how that is just, that's absurd what you're saying.
We would be screaming at each other then because that's ridiculous.
Be an all-timer. It would be an all-timer.
Fat ass. Listen, that would drive me nuts.
There we go. And now we've got hands.
And you'd be in the corner laughing like, yes, there it goes.
Tom Jackson like, get him, boom. Yeah. It's a baseball meeting, Tom. He's my best friend.
Get him, boom. That's exactly what he would do. By the way, several players have had to, of course, wrestle with the decision for Major League Baseball. I mentioned what happened with the NBA. Should mention today that Arizona Diamondback starting pitcher Mike Leake said no, he's not coming back. Didn't think it was worth the health risk. I'm sure the Diamondbacks are all broken up, Mike. What, Mike Leake's not going to pitch for us this year?
The Nationals already had two bow out, Joe Ross and
Ryan Zimmerman. Yeah. They've decided not to play in 2020. But Zimmerman, completely understandable. His mother has MS. I understood when he came forward, and so he explained in deciding whether to play and how difficult it was for him, and I got that. There are players in every one of these leagues who are going to have to opt out. Their wives might have problems. Their children might have problems. You certainly understand that. You feel for them. Mike Leake. I'm just laughing because he's Mike Leake. But
there'll be more of those though.
Yeah.
The Mets were smart in this sense. It was a 60-name list that you were supposed to submit yesterday. All clubs had to put the list together.
All clubs did. I saw the list across the MLB.
The Mets put out 45 because they know that there's going to be some changes. They want the flexibility because this is not a static situation. It never was, but, I mean, your 60-person squad right now, maybe what, 10% turnover, maybe more between today and when the season actually starts, if it does?
Yeah. Well, I wondered how they were going to do this for all rosters across all sports. You've got to have all kinds of flexibility with those rosters and add-ons. By the way, it should be noted, regardless of my besmirching Mike Leake's prowess as a pitcher, that the decision he made to walk away is going to cost him $5.6 million. I'm pitching. I don't know what his set of circumstances are, and you know what? I understand it. Everybody's free to make up their own mind, and I'm not going to disparage him in real life. I can on a radio show, but in the real world, I wouldn't if I were his teammate. But if there aren't extenuating circumstances, that is to say his wife, somebody in his family, they don't have underlying health concerns or conditions, pre-existing conditions. If everything is just everything and everybody's all right, I'm taking that risk. I'm pitching for $5.6 million. Are you crazy?
Well, the one thing I think that is crazy is MLB is still proceeding like they're going to be flying to everybody's ballpark and playing a bunch of empty ballparks all over the country. I mean, I get it that you stick to your American League East and National League East, the two centrals. But, I mean, the West involves, in the American League, travel from Houston and Arlington to Seattle. That just doesn't seem smart to me. You can't regionalize these things?
I don't know how they're going to do that. I will contend this is going to be a certainly different but infinitely fascinating season to watch. It's going to produce at least one really odd result. Some team that on paper is horrible is going to somehow catch fire and win and defy some of the statistical
odds.
Make
a wild card or something.
Yeah, they're going to get in. Somebody's going to get in that's not any good. I mean, it's happened before, but usually 162 games is such that it exposes teams for what they are. 60? We see teams, the Washington Nationals, had there been a 60-game season last year, were going nowhere. Remember what an underachieving lot that was? Do you remember the odds that you could have got on and somebody did, if you bet on the Nats to win the World Series through, after 50 games, they were sub 500. You got incredible odds. I know of at least 2 people that were documented that did. They were like, no, I'm sticking with it. That team's too good to suck like this. I'm still betting them. I'm betting them. And they did. They kept throwing it down. They were like, look at that roster. There's no reason this team should suck. I'm betting them every week, doubling down. And then they get in. They win the whole damn thing. That guy's laughing. I mean, imagine. That's conviction. That's gambling prowess.
Laughing like Ian Poulter on a tee box this weekend.
Play that. Do you want to play that as we go?
Absolutely. We all need a laugh.
So if you guys want to laugh, Ian Poulter on course, caught on mic, no fans around. This is what it sounds like.
Good guys out here on the PGA Tour.
That is ridiculous. The best that they all laugh. We're all children. We're all just children.
Good guys out here on the PGA Tour.
Who's the playing partner says that was big?
I believe those Chalmers. That's the thing that Chalmers did that makes him the most famous he's ever been.
Oh, that is rich. That is rich. Coming up next on our Phone Hero hotline will be my good buddy Ira Schoffel, WarChant.com. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 97 on ESPN Radio. Great to be with you. Really appreciate you joining us. I'm Jeff. That is Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. Unique setup on the YouTube feed today. You can still see us. One of the cameras is working. One of the cameras is not working, but you can watch us. Just a different angle, man. Theatrical around here. We make do. Different shot. You can, of course, find the show, all 3 hours of it, on iTunes. If you miss portions of the program, go back, get caught up at your leisure. Show will also be on Spotify, so lots of ways to listen in. You can email us if you like, jcs@979espnradio.com. You know what we do on Mondays. In a moment, I will bring in my man Ira Schoffel, warchant.com. In fact, it's time to head to the Phone Hero hotline for our guest. Hello, Ira. How are you, brother?
I'm good, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing well. All right. So at the end of the day, first of all, I would invite everybody to go read your 3-2-1. What's next for the ACC with Swofford set to retire? Tom and I talked about this. You know, I carry the banner for old Swaffy and have celebrated all things Swofford kind of tongue-in-cheek on the show for years. But there are those who loathe him and those who celebrate him, and I thought your piece was nice and balanced in that regard. What is your personal opinion of John Swofford, and is this a really good thing for the ACC that he's moving on?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good guy, and I think that you could, and people might roll their eyes at that, like, hey, who cares if he's a good guy? I mean, there are plenty of athletic directors and conference officials that have gotten their schools in trouble for various reasons. So it's not a given that your commissioner or your AD is going to be a good guy. I think he is a good guy, and I think he was a good guy probably for the job when he was hired. The ACC at that point in time was in really good shape financially. There was a time, again, like just about 15 years ago, where the ACC payout to the member schools was better than the other conferences.
Yeah.
But TV deals kind of went the other way, and I think he was a little bit slow to react, obviously, in terms of trying to position the conference into a position where it could take advantage of some of that ACC money. But at the same time, I think his hands were tied somewhat. This conference is what it is. I mean, you've got a lot of private schools. You got a lot of smaller enrollment schools, the Wake Forest, the Dukes. Even now, you add in some of these other schools, but it's not like it's not like these are big flagship universities that you added. So you've got a lot of kind of second-tier schools. So they don't have the huge enrollment bases. They don't have the huge fan bases. And so when it comes to negotiating TV rights, the Big Ten and the SEC have done a much better job. I would say where he probably failed, if you're going to blame him because he was in a leadership position, is really being more aggressive in terms of how they expanded instead of being often defensive. I think for the most part, the ACC was, kind of playing very responsive. And again, he got a lot of credit for bringing Louisville and Syracuse into the conference, a few years ago, and then bringing Notre Dame as a halftime member. But all that really did was it kind of kept the conference alive. It didn't really do anything to advance the cause. So it's, I think his legacy is he was in charge when the ACC kind of fell way behind these other conferences from a financial standpoint. But I don't know that that's all his fault because, it's just kind of the lay of the land of this conference, unless you were going to blow it up and start all over again. And that wasn't obviously something that, the power structure in the ACC and Tobacco Road was going to have any interest in doing.
Well, and now that can shift, and that's in your article where we could get somebody outside of Tobacco Road having a greater influence on the conference and the decision-making that takes place within it. I would also wonder, just as I think about this, you talk about the markets and or alumni bases and really enrollment in some of these schools in the SEC and the Big Ten, which are so much greater in enrollment-wise than what the ACC has to offer. Would you not, at some point, and you talk about blowing it up, it's interesting, it's almost like you would want to say, hey, for the sake of television markets and viability in that regard, let's bring in a UCF out of Orlando, a USF out of Tampa, and maybe tell, a school like Wake Forest to have a good day.
I mean, here's the thing. I think everything kind of has to be on the table.
Right.
And again, it was something that I always found odd in, really, my first, 10 years or so covering Florida State, I really didn't focus too much on the ACC and what was happening in the conference because it didn't really matter at that point. All the conferences were kind of making about the same money off of TV, and the ACC was actually in pretty good shape. So, but it was when, Andy Haggard made the big stink in 2012 and had some forethought to say, hey, we're about to be in real trouble here because the Big Ten's got their television network. The SEC already had their network coming down the pike. And, you looked at the ACC and you said, well, how are we going to keep up? So at that point, I started, really paying closer attention to it. And I would talk to, Eric Barron when he was the president at FSU, or talk to people in the ACC, Commissioner Swofford, other people in the office. And one of the first things they would always talk about is when it came to expansion, when it came to the makeup of the conference, they kept talking about the academics of each school, the cultural fit of each school. It's like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. And I get that you want to be affiliated with other really good academic schools. But at the end of the day, these athletic departments are not going to be funded because you have good academics. And so at the end, they ended up having to take in a Louisville. They ended up, having to make some deals that maybe they wouldn't have because, they realized this is the reality. You've got to fund these athletic departments. So I'm not saying you kick Wake Forest out, but maybe you say to them, look, I mean, if you're not going to devote X amount of dollars to football and really, change what your approach is, maybe it's taking more non-qualifiers in or kids that don't meet your academic profile, whatever it is. I just think they have to look outside the box because if we just keep going down the road we're going, and I quoted it in the article that graphic Stuart Mandel at The Athletic put out about a month ago. I mean, you're talking about in maybe within about 10 years, the SEC schools and Big Ten schools are going to be making about $30 million a year more than ACC schools. And that's bad enough. Like, I get that's bad enough. But what's worse is you're going to be way behind the Pac-12 and the Big 12. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's one thing to say, hey, we can't catch the SEC. They've got too many big schools and rabid fan bases. We can't catch the Big Ten because they're all flagship schools, and we just can't do it. We can't make up all that history. But you can compete with the Big 12 and the Pac-12. You should compete with them. And you look at that graphic, it looks like those schools are going to be pulling away pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if you're that far behind, you really can't be expected to compete on an annual basis. You just simply will not be able to pay your coaches, the best coaches in the land, anything close to what those schools will be able to pay their coaches, and thus you'll get a second-tier guy and a second-tier staff. And over time, the disparity in money being that great leads you to be a second-rate program. And so that can't be allowed to happen. And so in that case, as you noted, really everything is on the table. I think it'll be a fascinating search for the next head of the ACC because, I mean, like you noted, it's really questionable about what can be done to close the revenue gap.
Yeah, and I think that, there are some good candidates, and I didn't go into that in the piece. I think it's an attractive job without question, even with all those factors, because, if you talk to people in college football, they'll tell you that the most powerful people now are those five commissioners of the Power 5 schools. And so, that's an attractive job. If you're Dan Radakovich or some of these other really, really high-profile athletic directors, the idea of being one of the 5 Power 5 conference commissioners has to be appealing. So I think they'll have some really good candidates, but at the same time, if the ACC power structure is not willing to do different things and change the way they go about things and change what they think the makeup of the conference should be, then I don't know if it's that attractive of a job. So I think on both sides, I think if I'm, some of the schools that got thrown about, some of the people whose names got mentioned by people in the ACC reporters, we're familiar names. Michael Kelly, who's now at USF, who used to work in the ACC office. Shane Lyons, who's at West Virginia now, used to work in the ACC office. I get that, but I don't think we want to go down the road of people that were lieutenants under John Swofford. And so now the question becomes, who's going to make this decision? And that's what I really don't have a clear answer, because I don't know if any alliances have been formed. And we do know that when FSU and Clemson were both talking to the Big 12, or at least listening to the Big 12 about 7 or 8 years ago, Eric Barron, who's the president at the time, had a deal with Clemson's president where they weren't necessarily going to be a package deal, but they were going to at least confide in each other what they were doing. Neither one of them was going to leave the other one in the lurch. So I think there's a commonality between those two schools. Now it's, can you bring in the Louisville, a Miami, a Virginia Tech, a Georgia Tech, maybe any of these other schools to kind of create like a voting block to say, no, we're not going to bring in another Swofford guy. We have to go in a different direction. And on the other side, if I'm one of those candidates, I'm going to the ACC and saying, how willing are you going to be to change the way you do things, to be more aggressive, maybe to look at everything? Because if you just keep going down this road, this job is attractive, but it's going to be a job I'm going to be the one that's front facing as we continue to fall behind these other conferences.
We do it every week. It's your favorite part of what I ask you. We playing football in the fall? We going to play some football in the fall, buddy? Because it was also pointed out in your piece that the bottom line is if athletic departments don't get the money from football games being played, not only is it disastrous, it's beyond that. It's a new reality in college sports and at universities everywhere. Budgets slashed, sports programs cut across the country. I mean, a whole new world being discussed if they don't play football. And there's real questions whether they can play football, Ira. We're staring that in the face right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to be determined. Personally, I think a lot of it's going to be determined by what we see in terms of the severity of the cases over the next month or so, over the next few weeks, because they're going to have to make a decision probably
soon,
by early to mid-July whether or not they're going forward with it. My guess is they will keep going forward with it and saying they're monitoring the situation. If the cases keep going up, or at least don't stop, which I don't think they are anytime soon, then it's going to be I think people are going to take a good, long, hard look at the severity of the cases. If the hospitalizations don't go up, especially in that age group, the longer it goes on where the severity of the cases doesn't look that bad, then maybe they can stomach it and put everything in place to try to keep it as safe as possible and then quarantine guys when they get sick. But if these young people start getting seriously sick,
then they're done. You're done. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're done talking. So I think I cannot envision a scenario where by the beginning of August it's going to be squashed to the point where we're not worried about a lot of cases. To me, it's just got to be, we just got to hope that we have more evidence that young people are not seriously affected.
It will be weird to see, though, with all the surrounding, aspects of football staffs and personnel. You got coaches that are older in some cases, doctors and so forth on the sideline, and just it'll be fascinating to see how's a coach address his team? You say you got a 64-year-old coach or something like that. Does he go into the locker room and talk to them, or is he like on a Zoom meeting?
Well, and then you've got staff members. You've got staff members who have spouses who have immunity problems.
Yeah.
We've already seen where a couple coaches have said they're not going to live. James Franklin said he's not going to live with his wife during the season. And there's been a couple other coaches that have had to do the same things. And you're going to have support staff members the same way. It's daunting, man. I mean, the only thing I would say, and I thought about this the other night, when we originally started talking about the spring semester, and pretty quickly everybody said, no, that can't happen. There's too many other obstacles. Let's just try to make it happen in the fall. We kind of put that on the back burner as even an option, or we kind of stopped considering it. Based on what's going on right now, maybe spring football becomes an option again, because the bottom line is you can't not have football. If they don't have football at all, I mean, this entire sport, college athletics, as we know it, will be completely different. But maybe you could salvage something in the spring. I know that would create a lot of headaches with the NFL and everything else, but it may be the only option.
Always appreciate it, brother. Be well. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jeff. See you, man.
That's my boy, Ira Schoffel, on the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gaines Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. Yeah, I'm telling you, let's come back and talk about it. Let's talk about what he just had to say there, because it's funny. On the one hand, we're confronted with this stark reality, and on the other hand, meaning the surging number of cases that we're seeing on a daily basis, especially in the state of Florida. And on the other hand, you're just repeatedly hit over the head by the financial realities that sports as we know it, NCAA sports, college sports across the board, are radically altered forevermore if they do not have a football season this year. So you're juxtaposing the safety and health of your student athletes in the facility and at the facilities and the staff members and all of that with the financial grim realities of needing to play the sport. And it's just it really, you juxtapose those two things and you feel like a monster in a weird way, because one's about money and the other's about life.
Well, and here's the thing that I would do, and I know there's a longer discussion coming, but just really quickly, if these players haven't been screened again, and I don't mean for COVID, I mean for anything that could put them at a higher risk for suffering severe consequences from COVID, I would hope those examinations are happening. I'm sure there's a baseline physical that everybody takes before they get into college, and it's much better than the one we got in high school or whatever. But, might want to double check for asthma or other conditions, things like that.
Yeah.
Because some guys, you hear stories all the time about players who have underlying conditions and they didn't know it. It just cropped up on them. Mm-hmm. Now it's more important to be redundant than it ever has been before in a lot of different ways.
Nobody wants that blood on their hands. They absolutely, I would think, are testing as thoroughly as you possibly can. But, of course, those things cost money, too. So universities are going to take a beating. Athletic departments, if I could speak, are taking a beating either way. It's just a matter of degree. And so, you'd be better off spending to be sure that you are providing the best possible environment for the student athlete to participate in moving forward, and the safest than not, and then have somebody die, get sued, call that a day. You'd have a death.
What do you know? He had a respiratory problem.
Yeah, didn't see that one
What
coming.
do you know?
What do you know? Yeah, how did
you
we not
know?
Yeah, you got to know. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Following up with Ira, as we did there, always appreciate his time. And also, you've heard it today, but let me reiterate, we really do appreciate our new business partners, our friends, sponsoring the phone line, Phone Hero hotline, if you will, specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. They do have two locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gain Street, online at phoneherotlh.com. So go check them out, and we thank them for joining us and providing sponsorship on the phone line, which is a no-brainer. What the hell are we doing? Good job, Phone Hero.
They do more than that, too. You'll hear from their regular spots that trade in equipment. They can take a look at all your equipment. You don't have to go to the big box stores and, look at those invoices and say, what the hell is this?
So we already had, Tom, a football game canceled. It's happened. And I kind of cringed when I read it, because I thought, is this a domino? Southeast Missouri and Dayton jointly announced today that their season opening football game, which is scheduled for September the 3rd, has been canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. With challenges related to COVID-19, Dayton would not have time for its football team to be physically prepared with the proper exercise and heat acclimatization. Acclimatization is what I meant to say, needed prior to its first game. They couldn't get acclimated to the heat, so they say. This year's meeting was the first game of a home-and-home series with both teams, and they're going to work to reschedule the game during a future season. Dayton was 8-3 last year, tied for second in the Pioneer Football League, if you're wondering, with a 6-1 mark in 2019. So that's where they're at. Southeast Missouri, SEMO, searching for another opponent to fill the vacancy as well. I don't know, frankly, for a game that's scheduled September the 3rd, why they felt the need, why they felt compelled in June, albeit the end of June, to cancel a game, but they did.
It sounds like maybe Dayton was the one who wanted to cancel the game. If Southeast Missouri is looking actively for another opponent for that specific weekend, seems to me that they want to play football. So maybe that's what it is. It could be just travel costs and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say there's more to it than getting acclimated to the heat. I have a suspicion that they wanted out of that game for whatever reason. They could blame it on COVID.
They might have been looking at the budget. It was going to be bad anyway in a regular year, not a COVID year, and they said, you know what, let's just find a way to get out of these deals. Yeah,
nobody's going to want to get involved in a knockdown, drag-out fight about whether or not you play that game if you cite COVID. People are going to be like, well, seems a little early to me, but, I mean, what am I going to do, get into a heated debate about this? All right, fine. That's how that's going to go. But I just worried when I saw the headline, football game versus Dayton canceled. I went, oh, boy.
I'm just looking at the conferences in general and seeing if they have any recourse. Let's just say that you've got some fall sports being played, and it's not just football. So now you've got maybe indoor volleyball or maybe they move those games outdoors. I don't know. But they find a way to play different sports, Olympic sports, and then the big ones. Does the conference have any say if the university itself says, listen, we're not going to be able to travel to X, Y, and Z. Florida State can't make that trip up to Syracuse this year. Sorry about it. We're going to hop on a bus and go play Mercer. Can the ACC tell them no? Or can the institution say, listen, that's all great that you want what you want up in North Carolina, but we're trying to play games, and we're going to call universities that we would have never dreamed of calling before to play games.
Yeah, I don't think they can, Tom. This is a year unlike any other. I don't think they would want to stand in the way of safety. If you're making decisions born out of concern for your student athletes, their safety, staff safety, yes, there's a financial element to it, but I don't think there's any question that Commissioner Swofford would say or stand down in a situation like that. I imagine the two-member institutions, or even in this case, I'll give you two games, West Virginia and Boise. The West Virginia games in Atlanta, the Boise State games in Boise, Idaho. If the two universities involved call one another and say, is this even feasible? Is this something we can do? I mean, do you feel safe? Do you want to play a game in Atlanta without fans? And we're losing out on the money we were going to get anyhow, so what's the point? I mean, do you want to play it a year from now, reschedule this for a year from now. Can we do that? Is it possible? I mean, I don't think that the conferences, the respective conferences, in this case the Big 12 or the ACC, are going to say, no, you can't do that.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, a lot of conferences have huge gaps in their footprint where you've got, large travel. Obviously, we know in the ACC, we're supposed to go to Syracuse this year. You have Pitt coming down here. You have Boston College coming down here. In the Big 12, their example probably is West Virginia. So if you've got Texas Tech playing West Virginia, for example.
Right.
I mean, these are conference games that are obligated to be played, so you get your TV money from the ESPNs or the Foxes, whoever you have to deal with for your own network and for the Saturday package. It's hard to
imagine Pitt coming to Doak Campbell Stadium. It's hard to imagine Florida State going up to the Carrier Dome. There's 2 games right there. So would the ACC then say, okay, look, we get it, but you got to schedule Georgia Tech. Do you have an opening on October 31st?
Right.
Who has openings? Can we play a conference game that wasn't on your schedule? Is there somebody from the other side that you're not scheduled to play that also has a date there that they'd like changed, or a team that they don't want to travel to?
Yeah, are you going to pay us for going and getting UAB to come drive over? We were supposed to play Pitt, and we're going to play that game on ESPN2, part of the ACC deal. We expect to be fully paid for that game. Are they going to let that happen?
I don't know.
There's a lot of important conversations that need to be had on the conference level beyond the fact that we don't make any money off of it and our commissioner's going away. There are big conversations this year about, are we honoring the contract with ESPN? Are we honoring our membership within the conference? And what leeway is going to be given from the top down in case there are rolling cancellations in different regions of the country? That's really easy to envision right now, isn't it?
Oh, without question.
Maybe we're on the back half of a wave in the state of Florida, but maybe it hits Pennsylvania in a way it hasn't hit before.
Yeah.
And so now you've got to look at Penn State and Pitt and other schools in that area that might not be able to play games.
Well, in about 2 weeks, you'd like to see a set of very specific guidelines for how this season's going to be played and what's allowable and what isn't across the board. But we talked before, they don't have any unified front. There is no czar of college football telling everybody this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. It would be helpful if they did, and maybe that's where we're headed. But as of right now, we don't have that. And I think they're going to have to be really, really flexible. And, this is a situation where you wouldn't ordinarily have any room to be malleable. You'd say, I can't do that. You've got a scheduled game in conference. It's going to be played on the ACC network, or ESPN2. You got to play that game. But now you really can't do that. I also would like to know, so how we look at these positive tests. Ira just referenced it. You're seeing people recoil at the numbers. Maybe they should. Maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. Don't know what's right just yet. But I think that we're going to have to see that sort of wane, because the truth is the numbers are going to skyrocket. Just time and the presence of the virus and tests tell you we are going to see the sheer number of people that have COVID rise rapidly. We're already seeing that in many states, Texas and Florida, South Carolina, amongst others. So that's going to happen, and if it is, in fact, largely contained to 20-somethings, 30-somethings and 20-somethings, in this case, 20-something-year-old athletes, and the percentages remain the same, meaning those that are of that age group that get it and don't have the deleterious effects. They're not devastated. They're not hospitalized. They're not required to go to the ICU. They just feel a little under the weather. Because they're young and virile, they're able to come back 10, 14 days later and they're fine. If that happens, then you have to look at these tests and say, okay, well, here's what we're doing. We decided to proceed with the season. Do not be alarmed. Every week there's going to be a report that Michigan had 18 players test positive last week. Those 18 players can't play this week. They're going to have to miss 2 weeks of the season. But Michigan, you're free to play on. A little less depth. Sorry.
Right.
Probably going to affect the outcome of the game, but do you want to play the game?
Sure.
And they have to be willing, and knowing that it could be your turn next. You have to be willing to say, yeah, well, we're going to play the game. The show must go on. We're going to play the game. This is about the money. We're playing the games. So if my starting quarterback, my starting left tackle, my starting running back, my top wide receiver, my starting middle linebacker, and my star corner all test positive on Wednesday of the week we play Clemson, are you willing to say, well, that's a toughie. We're going to go into that game against Clemson with all of our backups at those key positions, and we're going to play that game? They're going to have to be willing to say yes.
Yeah, this is where you come back to one fundamental question from March, which is the incubation period. Can I test negative and still have the virus multiplying in my own body to the point where it might be a problem on a Saturday, but I got tested on a Wednesday and I was negative that day? I think the answer is yes to that, right?
Yeah.
That, like, okay, so we could have two members of the secondary, or a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, a quarterback.
Yeah.
They're all down. They're all down for the game. Chances are that there are more players that are going to be negative on Monday or Tuesday after that game is played that aren't right now. They're not testing negative. So what's that going to do? Well, it's going to pass it along to the opposing team. I mean, that's if I'm Ohio State, and it's a bad example because it's a rivalry game, so I'll move it. If I'm Ohio State, I'm playing Illinois. Illinois has 16 cases that week. Those kids are out. I'm betting that we're not playing the week after if I'm an Ohio State fan.
Yeah.
Because you've got a huge percentage of a roster that you're about to face quarantined, and I can't imagine that more than 16 don't have it. They've got to have it.
Well, this gets back to frequency of testing, Tom. I think, honestly, you've got to test incessantly. So, I mean, almost daily. That's where we keep talking about the costs. So if I'm testing you on a Wednesday of practice and we play Saturday, well, you know, we've already talked about some of the guidelines they're saying is that you test before you get on the plane, because football is really going to be the lone sport where that kind of travel is still permitted. So we're testing everybody when they get on the plane. They fly to the game. When you get off the plane and you go to the hotel or whatever, maybe these days you're just going to it's going to be a weird set of circumstances with travel. Nobody's staying anywhere. Maybe you fly in for the game, you get off the plane, you go to the stadium, you stretch, and you play the football game, and you get the hell up out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be a possibility. But the point would be this, that before you step foot through the gates to play that game, they're going to get tested again the day of the game. So you were tested on Wednesday, you were tested before you flew up there, you were tested on game day.
Yeah.
That's about all you can do.
Well, and here's something, if you're looking for a silver lining, I also hesitate to say this in a true positive way, because now you've got test cases, and, you know, are they willing test cases? But that's exactly what student athletes are going to be. The data that we have on what the virus does to healthy people in their late teens and early 20s is going to be fortified by collegiate athletics.
Yeah. Well, and professional sports in general, too.
That's for you get to the 20s and your 30s at that point, and you get to see the numbers. Yes, but sports are going to provide a heap of data in that regard.
Did you watch 60 Minutes last night? Did you watch any of that?
No, on the testing story. No, I saw it teased all day on golf, but I didn't watch it.
No, it's just interesting. There are a lot of young people volunteering to get it. Like, if it's going to expedite us getting a cure or a vaccine, or give us more information on what it does to the body, they're volunteering.
That's wonderful. I'm glad they are. College sports is a different beast.
Yes, I agree. No, I'm just saying, to the side, it's interesting. You know, the last time we saw such a unified front worldwide was polio, basically. And so you've got, that's what Fauci keeps talking about. Like, maybe we'll get an answer or a vaccine or something that helps mitigate all of this a lot sooner than we ever thought, because we've got people all around the world pulling in the same direction.
That's why he believes, his own opinion, not promising a timeline, that by late this year or early next year they're going to have one. How effective it'll be, it's hard to know.
Right.
But just because, yes, you have instantaneous communication across the world, and so you could share the data, that would take months and boxes and bins and shipping containers.
One of the bright spots of the internet and the mass dissemination of information. A lot of times these days it's certainly the problem, because it's the mass dissemination of misinformation and outright lies. But in this case, yes, sharing those kinds of facts are important.
What sports is going to do is it's going to show you whether or not the people were right about the severity for teens and early 20-year-olds. Even all the way through their mid-30s. It's going to show it quick, because these are the most fit people in the world. And if you have more than an anecdotal case in this sport or that sport across the world, like a cricket player here and a tennis player there and a couple of football players, if it's more than that, that is going to be the big domino to fall for all the sports, I would think.
Yeah, but, I do take, if you're looking for a positive spin on all this, I do take solace in, like, Bundesliga. This stuff's going off without a hitch. How are they doing it?
Well, if you look at the amount of cases in the continent of Europe right now and how many they're adding each day, and you could, compare that to the United States, it's not equal landmass size, but it's better than looking at, say, England and then looking at the United States
Yeah.
or looking specifically at Germany. Those are states, essentially. In our union, that's the size of a state. But if you look at the continent of Europe and our continent over here, specifically USA within North America, it's a different story, man. I mean, this region,
Oh, I know.
it's like, where is it? Brazil and here. Those are the two regions of the world. They're like, whoa, they're worse than we are,
Yeah.
but not many other people are.
Biking. Well, I try to just allow me, please, to take some solace in the EPL and other places that are finding ways to get this done. And we're going to have the test that is Major League Baseball and tennis potentially, potentially the NBA and the NHL. So
It's probably the last time I say it, but I would have bought more into the KBO if they presented it like a freaking baseball game. And not like a panel show.
I know.
With
It's a
action
panel
going on in
show
the background.
all the time. I know. It's crazy.
I would have cared by now. I promise you I would have.
And you know why you would have? I'll tell you one reason you would have, because I've noticed this anecdotally just from watching when I do watch. It's a better game in the sense that there's more action. They put runners in motion. They contact the damn baseball.
Fielders are good. That's the big one to me.
Yeah.
Is like, all right, if it doesn't have to be a Derek Jeter, against your body throw at the short. But if there's a ball deep in the hole or you've got to move off your spot and be able to fire across the diamond in time, can you do it?
Yeah, they do.
That's a clean game. They do it all the damn
They
time.
do it all the time. Yeah. You earn it. It's actually not a bad brand of baseball. I like to just see played and spoken about like real baseball should be, Soon enough, we'll get it with the major leagues, we think. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. 97.9 ESPN Radio. Former President Barack Obama joined a group of notable athletes and activists in tipping his cap to honor the 100-year anniversary of the founding of baseball's Negro Leagues. I'll do the same here to the camera. There you go. The Tip Your Cap campaign launched online today with photos and videos from sports legends Hank Aaron, Derek Jeter, Michael Jordan, and the family of Jackie Robinson. Former President Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Jimmy Carter all participated as well. The tributes honored some of the Negro League's notable stars, including Robinson, Satchel Paige, Byron Johnson, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks. Jackie Robinson started his career with the Kansas City Monarchs and went on to break the color barrier, as you well know, with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947, not long after, with many of its best players gradually following Robinson's path. The league ceased its operations. You ever been to Canton? You ever been to the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Cooperstown?
When I say Canton, Ohio?
Yes.
I say Cooperstown, New York. Sorry.
I was 11 or 12, so it's a long time ago.
Freaking awesome, isn't it?
It is.
It is unreal.
It lives up to the billing.
It sure does. Not many of the museums, and I'm not talking about the Met and different things like that, but there have been only a few that captured me in a similar way. Now, there are great museums all over the world. I understand that, and I've been to a few, and they're always awe-inspiring. I got it. But I tell you what, I went to Cooperstown with such high expectations because I was already in my 20s by the time I went, and I had become such a fan of baseball and its history. You know, it's if you love baseball, you love baseball's history. You really do. You kind of, the two go hand in hand in a way. And that's why the numbers always mattered more in baseball. And it's why the debate rages on with the steroid era. It doesn't really rage on in football. Everybody's on steroids. You don't really care. Somebody breaks a rushing record or a passing record. It's like a story for about an hour. But in baseball, it's a big deal. Anyhow, so when I went with an ex-girlfriend. She was teaching at FSU at the time, and she was getting her PhD. And she is also a huge baseball fan. And so we decided we were going to go up. She was from Baltimore, and we were going to go to Camden Yards, and we were going to see the Orioles take on, I don't remember who they were playing. I want to say it was interleague play, and I think it was the Braves. And so we went up there, and then we said, well, let's travel. Let's go up to New York, and let's do all. And so we did. We turned this big baseball outing it was like a 10-day thing where we went to a bunch of baseball games, different stadiums, and we capped it off by driving up to Cooperstown. And I went into Cooperstown thinking, well, this will be neat. You know, I'll see Babe Ruth's uniform. I'll see a cool couple baseballs. Holy moly, that thing is detailed and simply fantastic. It's awe-inspiring. I want to go back. Amongst other things that I'd like to do in the time of COVID that we can't, I would like to bring my kids to the Baseball Hall of Fame because they do a good job. And I've heard, now I haven't been back in 20-plus years, but I've heard they did a really good job of enhancing that wing dedicated to the Negro Leagues. And they were able to garner even more in the way of jerseys and bats and balls and important dates and programs and pictures and all of that. They had something there when I went, and it was pretty neat. Josh Gibson and all that stuff. They had stuff, but I heard that they've added to it and that it makes the Baseball Hall of Fame that much greater. It was already awesome. All of its documentations from the first ball to first game, first bat, hats, all that, Ty Cobb stuff. It's just incredible. And I thought about that today when I was reading this story about this project in which the Negro Leagues were honored by Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Jimmy Carter, amongst so many others. And I thought, okay, well, that would be cool. I want to read more. And I already like to read. You guys know, you can tell over the years, I'm a bit of a history buff. I love reading about the players in the times, the regions of the country where it was played, and some of the sort of more mythical accomplishments. There's a mysticism to the Negro Leagues where there were players that undoubtedly would have been superstars in Major League Baseball, but who put on real shows in front of largely almost all black audiences. And so, unfortunately, a lot of those accomplishments were either not documented properly or outright dismissed by white audiences. And so I always wanted to know what's real, what wasn't. Did somebody hit a 650-foot home run or not? That kind of stuff. And the more that you can read about that and the more that you can learn about America's pastime in that way and all of the players that participated in Negro Leagues and how influential they were on so many other players that came along later on in the sport as a whole, the better off you are. It's just fantastic. So if you haven't been to Cooperstown, I guess I'm acting as an agent. You should go.
Well, one of the cool things about Cooperstown as well is just the town, like the actual town area and all the shops that you can go in that clearly embrace that it is the home of baseball's Hall of Fame, because the memorabilia you can buy in those stores is in its own way really, really impressive.
Incredible.
One of the pieces we have in my parents' house, we got it that day, was because it was my birthday. It's the Buckner, Mookie Wilson. It's the photo from behind home plate looking right down the line of first base. The ball is approaching Buckner, and both of them had signed it, and they dated what day it was. And that's a huge thing that's in our living room. But, like, that was personal to us because of our story, but there are just, dozens of these amazing things that people have signed. And Pete Rose is always there because he's always trying to make a quick buck. But there's all these amazing things from the early 20th century, some stuff from the days of the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Yankees battling in the World Series. And you see these amazing colorized photos that bring it to life.
Well, they do things, too. I would love to try this. It's going to have to be a later date. But you can pay extra to get the behind-the-scenes tour, too, which what they have stored away in the vaults.
Yeah.
You have to put on special gloves and things like that, but you can touch, Shoeless Joe Jackson's glove or something. Cool things like you can hold Babe Ruth's bat and feel how heavy that piece of lumber was that he was wielding.
Well, we stumbled into the good tour for Fenway Park when we were up in Boston.
Wasn't that incredible? Yeah.
We got super lucky. That was serendipitous. It was not intentional. We just got into a VIP group by accident because it was going off at the time that we were supposed to.
It kicked ass.
It was great.
We had a blast. Remember that old man with the World Series rings?
Oh, yeah.
And he took the picture with Alicia. That was great.
Well, Babe Ruth's bat was at the end. Everybody could have seen that. Mm-hmm. But his bat is at the end. It doesn't have a handle on the bottom. It doesn't have a nub. It's just a big stick.
Piece of lumber. It's insane.
It doesn't bend out. It doesn't thin out. It's just this big, broom handle.
They really have got to make that movie right. There have been a number of movies about Babe Ruth, all of which were horrible. The John Goodman one is terrible. Babe is awful. It's an embarrassment to movie making. They really need to make that movie. You're talking about a guy who was orphaned. His life story is insane. They really need to do this right.
I'm trying to think of who could play him right now. That's tough.
Well, I don't know, but you could find somebody. And, listen, give anybody enough time, they can beef up for the part. But I don't know who that would be. You'd have to have a wildly dedicated actor to do it. But the point would be that they exist, and that movie's really never been made the right way. His life story is insane. When you grow up in an orphanage and you end up having the kind of success that no other athlete before him had ever had, he changed the game forever. Famously, he's making more than the president, which nobody had ever done. You're the first player that, you're getting candy bars named after you and so forth. And you were an elite pitcher to go along with the fact that you were an elite hitter. I would just love that movie to be made right. It's kind of like I always get pissed off that there hasn't been a great Lewis and Clark movie. Like, what are we doing? That story's insane. How do you not make that movie?
Well, people wander in the woods. Probably that's a barrier.
Think about what that movie would look like. That's insane what they did. I think about it all the time. I just drive down the road thinking about Lewis and Clark. I'm like, holy hell, that was crazy. healthy, somewhat psychologically well-adjusted during the time of COVID. Could be tough sledding these days. We're all getting a little squirrely. Appreciate you listening to the Jeff Cameron Show. We're on YouTube, different camera angle today, but we're there. You can email the show if you like, jcs@979 ESPNradio.com. On Twitter, it's @JCameronShow. WTSM app, good for mobile devices. And again, hello, YouTubers and everybody. Appreciate you. All 3 hours go up on iTunes when the show concludes. If you can't find that. We had some issues last week. That's not our fault. It was the carrier's fault, I guess, right? The provider's fault.
So I got to talk to them, and it was a fascinating story. It was a specific kind of cyber warfare had hacked into their servers, and they told me how it looks and what the people do. Holy crap, what they went through.
But apparently it really messed us up in terms of providing the podcast, because some people contacted me saying they weren't getting it all the way back to like June, 18th or something like that.
It was attacking like the whole of everybody's feeds. And it was this thing that just propagates. I mean, it literally was like a fast-acting virus. It just propagates on itself over and over and over again.
Man.
And so it floods your system. You can't do anything because the system is too busy handling all these requests that are coming in. It's a specific type of cyber warfare that's just supposed to cripple your system because it can't function to do anything else but handle what these hackers are doing to it. Crazy.
What's with the hackers, man? Come on now. Leave it be. Let's go. People just want to listen to some podcasts. That's all. They want to listen to some podcasts. I'm amongst them. Anyhow, I guess we've got it fixed. And you can find the show there, and you can find the show on our website, and you can find the show on Spotify and all that stuff. All right, so good deal for New England, right? A pretty easy thing to say that you get an incentive-laden deal for Cam Newton. Post Tom Brady, this seems to be the best stopgap measure. I mean, you were going into a season with Jarrett Stidham at the helm. I think you would, as a Patriots fan, probably feel a little bit better about going into the season with Cam Newton. I think the Patriots are screwed either way, by the way. That roster is not very impressive, and I don't know that that's going to be a real good football team regardless. But if you're just going to look at if you boil it down to brass tacks and just say what's simple, what's simple is their Patriots are better today having signed Cam Newton than they were without him. There you go.
Yeah, because if Stidham still plays, that means he won a competition, like a real one. And if you've seen what Cam looks like in the offseason, there was a funny tweet yesterday from Emmanuel Acho, who he retweeted a video of Cam's workouts, and there's gospel music playing. Mm-hmm. And Emmanuel Acho said, you don't ever pull out the gospel music workouts unless something's really wrong and you really need to write something. You've got to right or wrong. It's like when you hear gospel music during a workout, that means that somebody is desperate and they're ready to get going. And Cam it reminds me of the first time I saw Bane in Dark Knight Rises.
You're like, oh my God.
Cam is always a big guy, but he has taken it to another level. He's huge.
Well, here's what I'll say. The foot injury virtually ruined him and what he was and how he could be effective, right? And then later on, he had the arm issue, and there were just so many things dating back 2 years now worth of on-again, off-again injuries for Cam Newton that made him a shell of the player that he was, his MVP season, and when they went to the Super Bowl. That player was not only a difference maker, he was a one-of-one. Nobody looked like Cam Newton. Nobody did what Cam Newton did. Now, Cam Newton's never going to be the most accurate passer in the league, but given all that he brought to the table, along with a strong arm and a brutalizing figure running the football, he was a force of nature. You'd never seen a quarterback that looked like Cam Newton. I'd argue we still never have. Nobody has ever looked like Cam Newton and played quarterback. I mean, it's incredible. And, when you talk, this is how you know he's an athletic freak, that he is awe-inspiring even amongst the best athletes in the world. When middle linebackers and tight ends and others in the National Football League, all of whom are huge when you stand next to them, are in awe of Cam Newton, like when they describe seeing him or working out alongside him and that they can't stop staring at what he is, then you know that's one big son of a bitch. Because it's not like NFL middle linebackers are small. It's not like, tight ends in the league aren't 265, 6'6", running 4.64. They're all monsters. And yet they look at Cam Newton and they go, whoa, Now, that's an athlete.
Yeah, the biggest compliment that I could pay to Cam Newton as a fan of a team in his division is when healthy. If it got to 3rd and 2 or 4th and 2,
first down, you were screwed.
it's automatic.
Automatic, and it pissed me off.
Not 1, 2. That's a big difference.
So when you talk about down and distance leverage, you had to recalibrate what that represented when you played Carolina for the very reason that you're talking about. A win on first down was different than a win against anybody else, meaning if you held them to 2 yards or less, that was a win. If they got 3, it's a loss because they get another 3, and we're down to 4, and that big bastard's probably pretty much going to have 2 shots to get 4 yards, and you can't stop him from doing that. Mm-hmm. And you know, when he could run like that, you really were screwed. So it was a game changer, and we just haven't seen that version of Cam Newton in a very long time. I mean, the feeble version that lost to the Bucs and was just throwing it all over the lot, really had nothing on it, didn't want to run, was a guy that kind of really lacked any offensive firepower, meaning his makeup was nothing close to what it had been his MVP season. Well, that guy, you sign him, and it doesn't do you any good. A healthy, foot fully recovered, arm feeling good Cam Newton, well, we know what that version of Cam Newton is. He's a top 5 player at the position. So,
and you know what Bill's going to do with him? He'll run the hell out of him if that's the case.
Well, I would.
It's a 1-year incentive-laden deal. You're not playing for the
no.
long-term future of his career. You're playing for 1 year. Bill's probably got a master plan with the draft or something along those lines, and he'll hit the free agency market next year. But if he's healthy, think about that just for a second. That you could have in the battle for, even if it's a wild card spot that New England is competing for. You've got the Josh Allen thing in Buffalo. That's a running quarterback who's physical. Mm-hmm. You've got Cam Newton, who can throw it, but, I mean, if he's himself, then they're going to run him a lot. You got Lamar Jackson down in Baltimore with a power running game. You got Derrick Henry in Tennessee with a power running game.
Yeah.
I mean, the list just goes on and on about physical offenses in the AFC, which was specializing in down the field, Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady for so long. I mean, even Big Ben to a degree. He's more of a passer now than a runner. But, I mean, you've got a lot of physical running games in the AFC if Cam's healthy.
Yeah, and yet it's Kansas City that everybody's chasing,
right.
Which is pretty funny to think about. But how best to keep that guy off the field? Well, the 49ers nearly gave you the blueprint, right? Run the damn ball. Run the ball. Eat clock. Fewer possessions, not more possessions. Don't give Patrick any time. Hey, speaking of the Patriots real quick, one other note. They were fined $1.1 million by the NFL for inappropriately filming the Cincinnati Bengals sideline during a game last season. Go figure. They also took away a third-round pick in the 2021 draft of the league. The production crew will not be allowed to shoot any games for the 2020 season. Of course, this occurred during the Bengals at Cleveland game, December 8th last year. Basically, what Belichick had to say about this is, quote, I personally have never viewed any video footage at all, anything that those production people have done other than what's shown on public television or something like that, Belichick said.
Plausible deniability, Bill?
So you believe him?
I believe that he didn't view their stuff from that week.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
Other stuff, different time.
The best is the video footage of the coach who catches those guys cornering the production crew and asking the director and cameraman what they're doing, and they're stutter effing their way through the response is the best.
My theory remains Cam Newton has been signed by the Patriots for a long time. They were waiting for that story to be released so they could release the Cam Newton news to dump right on top of it.
Well done, boys. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Bit of good news, I guess. Everything is well-intentioned right now. I don't know if it's actually going to follow through and work out the way they'd like it to, but if all goes according to plan, tennis that is, and we're all desperate. So listen, ordinarily, Tom?
Ordinarily.
We would say that, hey, you know what? Whatever, it's tennis. I don't know if it's going to make the show today. But with so precious few sports to choose from, anytime another sport professional announces that, or college for that matter, announces that they're going to play and that we can watch it, you go, all right, I'm in. Tennis is trying to come back in mid-August. The idea is to put the world's top players in a bubble. Basically where they're going to put them is the TWA Hotel at New York's Kennedy Airport. It will serve as the base for 2 tournaments, including the U.S. Open. They'll encounter no fans or media. They will exit the bubble only once they are eliminated. Should they feel adventurous, they can follow it by jetting off to Paris for the rescheduled French Open in late September. But they're attempting to put together a biosecure hotel, a reshuffled calendar, and 2 Grand Slam tournaments in what is going to be described as the weirdest year tennis has ever had. But you could apply that to just about every sport we're watching. And they're adding their name to the list of sports that are attempting to have something of a season. They only know that majors can only be a success if the top players are healthy. They've said, listen, those players also have to be willing to travel. And they have to be allowed into the country, and they have to play by the rules of the bubble, and they have to continue to test negative for weeks on end leading up to what they want to do in August. So it's an incredible leap of faith, but that is their plan for now. Every sport, as you well know, is in the process of returning to action, and they're facing these issues. You've got the German soccer, you've got NASCAR, the NBA is attempting, the NHL is attempting, Major League Baseball is attempting, but most of the players aren't already in the country. So they're expecting to flock to tournaments from dozens of places that are all at different points in their fight against the pandemic. So Roland Garros even plans to have fans there to watch the French Open. That's what they're trying to do.
They can try all they want. The numbers in Europe look pretty good compared to, say, the continent or North America, the United States, specifically within North America. But I don't know, man. You just had Novak Djokovic a couple weeks ago host what looked like a pre-COVID style event. Mm-hmm. And guess what the hell happened?
Yeah, he got it. The French Open gave up the traditional spot. This is the week we would be watching Wimbledon. And that's why I bring up tennis, partly because it's in the news for 2 reasons. This is for those that, you guys probably know, a lot of people take vacation this week. This is these next 2 weeks are kind of dead weeks for businesses all around the country. You've got people taking time off. The people that are working aren't exactly focused on working. I always thought that July got a little weird. July is like people hands to the sky. I need some time.
Well, typically on the sports calendar, you've got the 4th, which is Wimby, right? We have a little bit of Wimbledon, and then you have the All-Star game within a few days of the final, typically, that Tuesday.
Yeah, and so there's just a whole lot of nothing typically going on. You have Wimbledon, but that's not enough to sustain or quench the sports appetite, if you will, or thirst. But I like it. I watch it. You watch it. We always do, and at least it's a little something in the background. And then you get a situation where, the All-Star game, you have the day off before the All-Star game, the Home Run Derby and all that, and we pretty much take days off.
And then even in golf, you have some, lesser than tournaments in the United States, but then you have the Irish Open, the Scottish Open, followed by the Open Championship. So a lot of the world's best, if you care about that sport, you're watching it in the mornings. You're not watching it in the evenings because they're all getting their body clocks attuned to what it needs to be.
So some of the stars that we're alluding to here have already commented that they're not real sure they want to play these events. Rafael Nadal has said he would be nervous about leaving Spain. Roger Federer already due to miss half the season because of that knee surgery. He's scheduled a follow-up procedure, so he's done. Most of the top players have said, kind of a wait-and-see approach. Look, there is lavish prize money to be won. So if you think that they're just going to rule out the possibility of playing, that's foolish because, I mean, millions upon millions of dollars are at stake. And let alone prestige and another year older in your career. If there are majors being played, you would want to play them. But the money, I mean, they want the money. And how much are you willing to risk traveling in order to make the money?
Well, it's not just your prize money, too. Think about the logos you have on your gear, and you'll get to be seen by so many more eyeballs around the world because there are fewer things to choose from. So it's a great chance. Like, even if it's not the match or whatever Dustin played in with Ricky, whatever that was called, I forget.
Yeah.
But if it's something like a tournament, the Travelers in Connecticut that nobody ever cares about, you're going to have double the eyeballs, maybe triple
right.
in some cases.
Yeah.
That matters a lot to the brands. That matters a lot to, I mean, just your own marketing plan. Like, now you are more known worldwide than you were a week ago if you're Dustin Johnson.
You desperately, if you're a sponsor of one of these players, you desperately want them to play. You're spending $20, $30, $40 million basically to slap your logo on all of their equipment, and you want that front and center, especially since they're elite players. Good news for those that sponsor Serena Williams. She's been very vocal in saying that she is absolutely going to play. Can't wait to play, is training currently to play. She knows, and it's important for players like her because, look, she's at the end of a career. She's already prolonged it in ways very few have in the history of the game because she's an amazing athlete and has tenacious work ethic. But people like Federer and Nadal and Serena, you're going to want to play. If you can play, you're gonna want to play.
Hey man, if you can get a watered down field if you're Serena to run down Margaret Court.
I thought you were gonna say if you could get a watered down field for your boy Federer, come back and maybe.
Well, that's true too, but I mean Serena is on the brink of having the undisputed record, right? So if you can get through a couple of Grand Slam / majors, right? And some folks couldn't get on the plane because they couldn't test negative.
Well, yeah.
Oh well.
What a
My
shame.
God, only 6 of the top 10 players in the world are here instead of all 10. Isn't that nice?
Well, in the case of Serena, who lives in Florida, well, she has multiple houses, but she has her primary residence is in Florida. She has said, yeah, going to New York sounds good right about now. Yeah. Oh, how the tables have turned. Flock to New York if you're in Florida.
Yeah, certainly our caseload doesn't look anything like New York's or Connecticut's or New Jersey's. We're far worse than those.
Oh, man.
The other side of the coin can be brutal, man.
There will be no fans on site for these tennis matches. That will be something to behold. It will be, you talk about dreary, you talk about sterile. A U.S. Open without fans. That is the lone tennis tournament where fans play a prominent role. There are great fans that go to the French Open, go to the Wimbledon, go to the Australian Open, you name it. But the U.S. Open is famous for fan interaction because it's New York. It's the same when they play a PGA Tour event there. It's famous. It's always bordering on crossing the line of etiquette for the sport. But you get, the fans back their favorites, and it gets loud. It has an impact. It creates a real atmosphere, and I love watching late night U.S. Open tennis, on a Tuesday night coming home and you're watching that and you get some knockdown, drag-out match from a guy that's like a qualifier who's pushing the 5 seed into a 5th set. Okay, here we go. And the fans get into it. They start to root for the underdog. Or if it's somebody who's at the end of their career, come on, one more time. I mean, who can forget McEnroe there and Connors there and all these Agassi at the end of his career there. Fans willing these players into the next round, willing these guys one more time. With Serena, that would be the case ordinarily because this long career is nearing its end, and I think people want to see her win one more time at least. That stinks. We've said, hey, look, just bring back sports because I miss it, and we need something to talk about and to watch and engage in and distract us, and I think that's true. It's good for my business, frankly. But honestly, that's one of the, we've said, bring it back no matter what. I don't care about the fans. I will care about the fans not being at the U.S. Open. That'll suck. That feels a little bit like the Ryder Cup situation where it would have an impact.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch it. You're still going to watch. It's still live. It's still something that matters, but it's just not the same.
I think the crowd at Wimbledon is one that qualifies as making a difference because when they pick their person, when they pick their guy for the week, whether it's Henman back in the day or Jamie Murray, somebody from their country, that's got its own feel to it. But then they also pick somebody in the big group. It's been Roger a lot of the time.
A lot of times.
But when he's been bounced, it's not Novak. It's Rafa.
Yeah,
they can make a difference.
They can make a difference. I'm not saying that it's the only tournament that does, but nobody's as boisterous as New Yorkers are.
That's correct.
And that's a good and bad thing. They can be the most ridiculous fans in the world in an annoying way. They can also be the most raucous and entertaining fans in the world in a good way. So I've always just thought the U.S. Open. I fell in love with that tournament because of McEnroe and Connors. And I hate Connors. He was the guy I would hate watch. I rooted for everybody against Connors. Because Jimmy Connors is impossible to like, and yet people somehow did. I don't think they knew the real Jimmy Connors, but anyhow, when they would have these epic, incredible matches, and then at the end, Connors, his last 2 U.S. Opens, I found myself rooting for that old bastard just because he had given me so many great memories of hate watching. And at the end, he's working his ass off against the young and up-and-coming players. I can still remember that. And he's somehow still willing his way into the next match. And New York was a big part of that. New York fans were a big part of that. That was cool. Anyhow, they're going to try to play tennis. I don't know anymore, guys. That's the theme of the show. None of us do. I mean, I read it earlier. Let me reference it again. This is the number. Where is it? Clemson. Here you are. 37 members of the Clemson football program have contracted the coronavirus. 37? Clemson said on Friday it conducted 430 tests of its personnel, 47 coming up with COVID-19. 28 of those have completed a 10-day isolation period. No one's been hospitalized. That's important to note. And Clemson is isolating the recent players who tested positive for at least 10 days. Close contacts for those players or staffers have been advised to self-quarantine for at least 2 weeks. There have been 43 athletes, 4 staff members, all who've tested positive. So you had 14 more basically over the weekend. So we're that's a lot, Tom. 43.
You're getting there. You're getting towards a full roster.
Well,
and I'm not rooting for that. I'm not saying that. I'm just
no, but I think they are.
That's what everybody is doing in their head. They're like the math of against 85 or 100 when you include walk-ons. You're like, my God.
Well, I'll just
in on half the squad.
Yeah, but I'll say this: if you're Clemson, secretly, you wouldn't probably state this publicly. You're like, okay, yeah. Can everybody now get it, please? Can we all have it and move forward? None of us are hospitalized. Everybody's okay. Plowing ahead. Let's go play some football. Our guys have had it. Moved on from it.
It's just incredible to me. Like, okay, so the numbers are what the numbers are for people in that age group, and it's 99 or 90, whatever the percentage is. If you could somehow isolate the student-athlete population from anybody who's at risk, and I mean even middle-aged coaches that are in pretty good shape, like Mike Norvell, right? He's in the younger half of middle age, but
he's younger than me.
That's a lot of people are these days. More people every year, in fact, are younger than you.
Yeah.
Then maybe there's a way to make it work. It's just there are so many people that go into the operations of every one of these sports.
Football is really complicated, more than most. I've wondered all along how they're going to do this, but I think how they're going to do this, Tom, is that, if you have mass infection, and knock on wood, 99 point whatever % of those people that get it are fine, and especially young people who are in great shape like these athletes are, the quicker you're getting to some sort of herd immunity with them. And again, it's one thing to say, well, let's all get it. Let's all engage in herd immunity and move forward. Well, that's great, but you're asking 10% of the population to die if everybody gets it. And I'm being a bit over the top, but that's about right.
It's not too crazy of an oversimplification.
Yeah. So you are, and obviously nobody wants that.
I worry for the trench players. I continue to say that. Your big 0 techs or 3 techs, and then your guards and tackles.
All your offensive, defensive linemen.
The tackles sometimes are in really good shape, but the interior linemen on the offensive line and defensive line, you're asking kids to be 330, 350 by design. The diets they have to engage in to keep that weight on.
Yeah.
They're not carrying Marvin Wilson levels of body fat. Most of these guys are chunky. Baselli had the issue of our team.
Yeah.
He had a serious bout with it. It scared him. So, man, that's the dicey part here, beyond the obvious part that catching a virus is not good in general.
Yeah, you would prefer not to. But that said, it is fascinating. I mean, it's hard to continue to project with any certainty. You just can't as to a start of a season and what a season's going to look like. I think more than anything, what the season's going to look like is getting more and more difficult to figure out. I mean, I was talking with our friend Tim Linnefeld today, Seminoles.com. We were going through various items and just talking, chit-chatting, catching up. And we were talking about the Boise game, and he knows how desperately I want to go to the Boise game. And he's like, you can take my place. I don't care about going. I'm like, I want to go. If they're playing, I'm going. But then we started seriously. That kind of morphed into a conversation about, what do you think they're going to play it? And I said, well, I continue to hesitate to say no because I just don't know. Things change so rapidly. It already has during the life of this virus, during this basically mid-March to where we are now. So many elements of what we talk about on a weekly basis have shifted. So many statistical norms have changed. And you've just watched, the ebbs and flows of this thing. And golly, if you were tying your emotions to it, you'd be exhausted. Because one week you feel great about the possibility of everything opening back up and re-engaging. The next week you think, well, we're just getting started. We better shut it down again for another few months. And then you get, those are the extremes. But every day another set of statistics or ideas or comments or realities that slap you across the face. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So if you're tying your emotions to it, boy, it's a tough time right now. I'm not. I'm just going, okay. I read everything with it. I take everything with a grain of salt. I read it and go, well, that's not good. The next day I go, that's better. That's not good. That's better. That's not good. That's better. That's how I stay right there. Even Kale.
Yeah, the hard part is in general for college sports is just looking at opening up the campus in the fall. Or opening up the campus in August for the last of the summer sessions, or a period of time where everybody can flock to Tallahassee and then live either in their off-campus dorms, or the new kids can live on campus. Like, how's that going to look, and how's that going to be presented? It's not just about the fact that we think it's going to happen. How is the university going to look at the numbers, present the numbers, and are there things like COVID dorms for where you've got to self-isolate for a couple of weeks? Who brings them their food? Or how do they get their assignments?
People in hazmat suits.
Right. I mean, really, though. I mean, that's the crazy part here is, like, how does this actually, like, you understand that you want the result, but then you got to think about all the things that people have to say and do in order to make it happen. Good Lord. There's a whole lot that goes into it.
Well, and, what I think about, too, is not only listen, college administrators and athletic directors, athletic departments, people who work in the field have remained unwavering in their efforts to try to figure out a way to play the season. And we all know why. We all know this has to do with money. Huge sums of money. Life-affirming realities and or disastrous scenarios by which, if they do not play, sports are going to get cut around the country. University after university is facing a stark reality. So we know that they'll move heaven and earth to try to play some semblance of a season, and nobody knows what that's going to look like. Could be very regionalized, could be 8 games instead of 12. We don't know. But we know that they're desperately working to do that. And universities across the board have got to figure out a way. I mean, it's all in their best interest to do it. But, of course, you weigh that, the backdrop of public health and safety, and every day a new reality. That's what I talk about. It's like you can make these plans. But imagine whatever plans you were making 2 weeks ago, how altered they've been by what's happened since voluntary workouts began.
No, I could tell you that it was a certainty heading into the weekend that I'd be seeing my family in the mountains in Georgia this upcoming weekend for the 4th. It's a probability now, but it's not a certainty, just because so much is happening, particularly in the state of Florida. I was supposed to stop in Atlanta to see my other sibling on the way. Like, all these little steps, you're like, okay. I mean, now it's 85, 90%. But still, that it's not 100%
right.
Tells you that how guarded you have to be about everything that you do.
Well, I'm still, as I sit here today, of the mindset that you got to really look at the hospital beds. You got to really look at the intensive care units. You got to really look at
Filling up.
You got to really look at the death numbers. Obviously the fatalities. You got to look at those, because the increase in cases and positive tests, well, that was always going to be a reality as we got more tests and as we were able to provide more access to tests and quicker results. So we kind of knew, all right, well, it's been proposed that somewhere above 70% of the population is going to get it anyhow. So those numbers were always going to soar, but the key was, again, flattening the curve in order to keep hospitals from being overwhelmed. And that's I'll continue to monitor that more than anything else, because if these cases surge, if we find out that 8,000 in a day, 5,000 in a day, 1,500 in a day, whatever it is, you go, okay, well, that's certainly not good. It increases the likelihood of problems for hospitals, but just the numbers, so by themselves, that's not it. It's the hospital beds. It's the
hard part
intensive care units.
It doesn't have to go up proportionally,
right?
Like it was for 65 to 90-year-olds, in order for there to be an ICU and a hospital problem, because you're just talking about a sheer number.
Sheer number, yeah.
And so even if it's a quarter of the hospital, like a quarter of the people of the next 100,000 across the country, right, compared to the first 100,000,
sure,
you're still running it. I mean, hospital beds aren't actually that, ready and available. ICU units, when you look at the stats, you're like, holy God, for this county that's massive, only 150 to 200 beds at any given time? That's how few people need them in standard moments and standard times. But now, even with the surge capacity, these next 2 weeks are critical, because it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that you saw 5,000 cases. This weekend, 8,000 plus, 9,000 plus. Jesus. I mean, even if, a third of those people compared to a 3,000 case day.
Right.
Of above and beyond, the first 3,000 need hospital beds. Sugar, man, this is a problem.
But why you're looking at it so carefully is that if, in fact, those cases largely represent people in their early 30s or early 40s, late 20s, what percentage of them are going to require hospitalization?
Right.
What if it's less than 1%? Do you just proceed?
Well, you would certainly hope at this point, and I know I'm kind of pivoting, but we're 3.5 months into this deal where it was actually in the mind of the nation. Like, not the warning signs that were given earlier, months ahead of time. Like, sports stopped in the middle of March. That's when everybody went, whoa, what the hell is this thing?
What's going on? Yeah.
COVID? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
So we're 3.5 months there. You would hope in the 3.5 months of time that we've had to experience this thing on the ground that there would be a plan for a moment in which you have two distinctly different populations. One that's going to survive this thing, and then one that's at risk to not survive it.
That's correct.
We don't have that plan yet.
Shocking that we don't. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Wrapping it up, Jeff Kemper Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Weird week, man. Weird week. Not a useful week, typically, in the world of sports. And it feels like we're kind of going to just be, like we're just chit-chatting this week, guys. That's all we've been doing in the world of COVID for some time now. Luckily, we like to chit-chat, and we're decent at it. But this week, it's just sort of, I was so bummed when I woke up this morning thinking about, normally I'd be watching some Wimbledon. Because I loved waking up early and kind of throwing that on, having my morning coffee, chilling out, watching a little bit of that before I came in here to the studio. This is when the grass is at its brightest. It's not worn down yet.
Even the studio coverage from there
is good.
They really good panels always.
Really good panels.
The rotating between Chris McKendry or Chris Fowler and the crew.
She does a really good job, and in truth, he's better suited for tennis. Fowler is
on the desk,
not
in the booth. He's not welcome in the booth.
Well, McEnroe makes it abundantly clear that he tires of Fowler's commentary. McEnroe's the best they have, and has been for a very long time. Brad's good. Patrick is good. Patrick McEnroe is good.
The two of them, that's a good team.
They're really good, the two of them. That's a weird balance. There's nothing like it in sport. You have the two brothers, one wildly successful in his professional career, the other not so much. Good doubles partner. I remember one time Patrick McEnroe made a run in this tournament. It might have been a major. I can't remember which one it was. And I think it was his best ever finish. I think he got to a quarter or something like that. I was like, Patrick McEnroe is in the quarterfinals, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, I wonder if John's going to root for him, because it has to just be awkward, It's the Canseco thing.
Sure.
It's the Jordan thing where your brother is Larry.
Oh, the Tampa Bay Lightning had Brent Gretzky.
Oh.
There was a player named Brent Gretzky that was indeed Wayne's brother, and he was on the Lightning for like a half a year. Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I had a Brent Gretzky card. I mean, that sounds like a made-up dude, right?
That would be terrible. Yeah. That would be so bad.
There's a photo of them taking a face-off against each other.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
on this trading card I have.
Freaking Brent Gretzky. That's a toughie. Your brother's literally nicknamed the Great One. And you're just Brent.
You're the other one.
You're Brent. Yeah, well, it's better than Larry Jordan, who never made it anywhere, doing anything other than being Michael's brother.
Well, the Lightning weren't exactly doing much of anything in those days. I don't know whether Brent made it legitimately or not. I was too young to tell.
But anyhow, yeah, so I do remember he was a Davis Cup captain. Patrick was a Davis Cup captain as well, and so he did have that going for him. He was whatever a Davis Cup captain does. Let's see. John, I'm going to let you play.
So speaking of brothers, there's a good end to the story with the Chase Koepka thing. Did you hear?
No.
The Traveler said, you're good to go next year. If you need it, we'll let you in. We'll let you play.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Well, hey, listen, that was also a fun tournament to watch. That course looks stunning, but clearly right now we're going to have to do something to beef up the resistance for these courses that are just being absolutely throttled by the players. I mean, everything is 20 and under.
Yeah, they need to beef it up the way Bryson is beefed up.
Yeah.
He continues to get larger by the day.
He does, but he continues to play well. He finished inside the top 10 again, right? I mean, that's crazy. I don't know how that's happening.
He hit 460 on Friday, apparently.
I don't think that's true.
That was in an ESPN article from this weekend.
Was it? Did he?
It was probably downhill.
Yeah, it was
or something.
downhill off the cart path or something. You can't hit 460.
I'm just telling you what I read. It said 460. I was like, wow, okay.
I don't think he hit it 460. That's I need to see that with my own eyes.
That course is hilly as hell.
Yeah, it had to have been straight downhill, downwind.
Because they hit four bills a bunch at the Austin course for the match play. There's that one par 5 that goes.
You see it
down.
occasionally in different courses. Downhill in the British, sometimes you get the wind. I
can tell you from playing in Brighton, it was almost like a cliffs course. On a couple of holes. Like you didn't feel safe walking down the hills to the fairway. And you're like, man, if I catch one here, it's going to be in the air until tomorrow.
I'm glad you brought up golf. It gives me a chance to quickly salute and say thank you and hello to Melvin and David, whom I saw at Killearn Country Club yesterday. I was golfing yesterday evening by myself, went out there, Tom, and, when you get late on a Sunday, like 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m., you can kind of have the course to yourself. Very few people out there. And I was playing okay, and so I guess I was playing quick being a solo, and he and his son were out there playing, and I caught them, and they asked me to play through. And anyhow, as I did, I got to chit-chatting with them, and they said they were a huge fan of the show. That said to say hello to you. That's true. They did. And we chit-chatted a little bit, and he said he never misses, and I appreciated that. It was awfully nice. He was there with his son. And so hello to Melvin and David.
What hole was that, out of curiosity?
That would be number 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I saw your score.
Yeah.
All right, so you played
okay.
well as you played through.
I played well because I took my time. I really took my time, and there was nobody riding me, so I could just kind of think about it a little bit. And the trick when you play golf by yourself, I'm discovering, is to remind yourself to slow down. You tend to play too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm discovering that if I'm very deliberate with everything, I can usually salvage a decent
It's hard
score.
to do because
It is
in
really
a way
hard
you
to
take
do.
more time than you would if you were playing in 2s or
Yeah,
4s.
you do. You fall back into that habit too. I'm telling you, I really would have, for me, put up a good number if I had just made a few 10-footers. I could not get them to drop. I had 2 lip outs that kind of saw me stare off at the wilderness.
I had a good front nine on Saturday. That's all
That's
I'll share with the public.
So Dustin has now won every year he's been on the tour. It is insane. And it's just to win that many years in a row. What is it, 13 straight years?
13 years in a row.
13 years in a row to win do you know how hard it is to win a golf tournament? I mean, damn it. He wins one every year.
Try to give it away, but
did.
he fought through.
He did. That's where knowing how to win and figuring out when not to panic, obviously.
That's a real thing.
And Lord knows he knows how to win because he wins every freaking year. If he didn't have that major in his bag, in a weird way, winning every year would really kind of be a slight. People would be like, another PGA Tour win for Dustin.
It still kind of is.
I don't know. He got robbed of the 1. He should have 2. I mean, he got screwed totally, the hitting out of a bunker or grounding your club out of a bunker nonsense when people were sitting in it. It's the dumbest thing ever.
But the problem is he was lauded in the same way that Rory was or Jordan was, and specifically those two, not Brooks. Brooks just kind of emerged and won majors, and it's like, what do we do with him?
What is this guy? Yeah.
But with Rory and Jordan, it was, well, here is this pomp and circumstance. You have arrived. And then after they say you have arrived, period, boom, win. With Dustin, it's like he's arrived. Number 1 in the world. It was going to be a fait accompli that he wins Augusta. He falls down the stairs for whatever reason.
That's still an amazing.
It's like, where's the payoff?
Well, I don't know. Listen, he's still young enough that he could win 2 more majors, and we'd say, wow, what a career. A guy retires with 35 wins and 3 majors. That's a Hall of Fame career, first of all. Yeah. He probably already is in the Hall of Fame, right? He's now got 20-plus wins on tour and a major. He's going to go to the Golf Hall of Fame.
And he's got the superstar thing going. Again,
when you're
that helps.
That many weeks at number 1, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. I think he's got to secure another major or 2. As we were talking about earlier, he's got to win another couple majors for that career to really be lauded in the way that his skill set suggests it should be. I mean, he does do things that other players on tour simply can't do. It's crazy. Just the bowing of the wrist with the he's bizarre.
Yeah, the most impressive shot he hit today was the short game, though. It was after he is essentially in the penalty area. It's not a hazard anymore. These rules changes, name changes.
Yeah.
Is this part of getting old? Like, people just start calling things different things. You're like, what the hell?
Randomly. Yeah.
Penalty area?
Yeah.
So he's in the hazard, and he hits this glorious shot. Yeah. Like, he gets out, and then the third shot is just this gloriously soft lob wedge to a couple of feet. He saves par from being a couple inches from in the water.
Yeah.
That, to me, was the one that calmed him down.
His drive on 18 is pretty impressive, too. Mm-hmm. It's striped. Probably the best drive anybody hit all day. You're like, okay.
Oh, he could play 18 now if he's got the lead. Like, he got screwed in the PGA.
Yeah.
Think about the putt he misses, or the putts he misses against Jordan at Chambers Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's only because the first 2 shots are freaking epic.
Unbelievable.
And that's a 550, 560-yard hole. And then when he wins in Oakmont, it's a stripe down the middle, and he stripes a 5-iron from like 220.
Not afraid on 18.
He can close.
He can close. And he nearly tracked down Brooks when Brooks had a 2-way miss.
Yep.
It was getting kind of dicey there. I was like, Dustin's playing. He's hunting. He's playing.
That's such a crazy thing for Brooks, too, because he's missing 2 ways, and then he nukes a perfectly hit, not a thin 8-iron, like 15 yards too long. He's like, now I've got a 3-way miss. I'm left, I'm right, I'm long.
I'm losing distance. I can't figure. I mean, I can't gauge distance. Yeah.
That's a lonely place to be.
Well, he limped across the finish line there. He got there and it was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
If we had to play 2 more holes,
you're right.
I don't think.
Yeah, because it was a 4.5, 5-footer to win or not. You don't go to the playoff.
Yeah.
And it's a full day the next day.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was the PGA, so it was a 3 or 5 hole thing.
He wasn't going to win a playoff. It was not going to happen. Either you make that putt and hoist that trophy, or you just go get on a plane because you're not winning if this continues. It was crazy.
Yeah.
He fell across the finish line there.
That's the in your own mind, you're like, listen here, you stupid sack of. You must make this putt
because you can't hit a tee shot to save your life right now. We're going to hit spectators 30 yards right off the tee.
It's now or never, Bubba. Come on.
We'll fix this other stuff on the range. Right now, we got to get home, Daddy. We got to get home. Let's go. Yeah, that was fun. Good work out of you. Remotely, good work from Matthew. Be well, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.